Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to a bit of a sassy video today. I haven't done kind of a good like ranty thing in a while, and recently my book bestie and big sis Crystal did a video about really specific things in books that she doesn't like. Things that really are like more than a pet peeve maybe, but things you hate. And I realized that I have mentioned it here or there when I come across the books, but I haven't specifically talked about things that I haven't really liked. And I don't know, I really loved how she did it and the way she went into, detail about it. And so I have some things that are absolutely like hard lines for me. Like they will completely tank a book. They will make a book a 3-star or less just by it existing. I have very few exceptions of when it like does work for me, as well as to maybe kind of give you an idea of why certain books don't get read by me. Specifically a whole subgenre of romance I don't mention, because people recommend them to me all the time and I'm just like, okay, no. And again, it's not that a book can't have an exception to this, but I will very rarely like pick it up if it isn't vetted first by a very dear friend and not just like recommended by a viewer, because I have friends who know exactly what bothers me and will tell me first. But I thought it would be fun to, well, it'll be relieving to go through them. So some of them are just like, they're gonna seem funnier and they're more on the pet peeve side. So I'm gonna go through those ones that are a bit sillier. They're ones that won't fully tank a book, but just to kind of get us off in like a fun way, I'm gonna go over some of those. And then I'm gonna get into some that I have like a lot of feelings on. Because when I was watching Crystal's video, I didn't know if I could fully articulate things that I don't like, because that's something for me. It'll be like, let's say everybody's loving a book and they're giving it 5 stars, and like I read the book and I'm like, oh, I really like this, but it had these few things in it that, while I still loved the book and would recommend it, it doesn't get it onto my 5 or 6 star tier because it ruins a lot of the joy for me. So sorry that I'm playing with this a lot, but like I'm wearing this old like grandpa sweater that's from when I was a lot bigger, because it's like cold with the door open, but if I close it, it's stuffy. So I'm sorry. I had to make it work so that I'm covered. But anyway, sorry, temperatures are weird. So anyway, while we pause here for a second, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Give it a thumbs up to encourage me. Now we'll continue. So some of the things that are just goofy. What are some of these? Okay, one of them, we're gonna start off with this one because it's funny. Anal penetration with no lubricants. Man, I can't tell you how much that bothers me. And it's a big pet peeve of mine. Or when it's just spit is enough. Whether this is a MM scenario or whether it is, an MF scenario or like whatever it is. But honestly, especially when it's an MM and there will be a heat of the moment scenario and we're just spitting on it and thinking that that's gonna work, that is just terrifying to me. Like honestly, it makes things clench very violently. There's one I literally just read last night where I know it's supposed to be super hot. It's supposed to be super hot, that he just takes some from the front and moves it to the back, and I'm like, that's not enough. Like, it's not enough. You might think you produce a lot, but like, it's not enough. I know. I told you I'm starting out with the weird stuff. Again, this isn't a story ruining thing, but it does worry me a little bit. And I understand, like, sometimes like it's just so hot, like it just had to happen right now, and I'm just like, ouch. That's all I gotta say. Ouch. Yeah, like I said, that one is random, but it just makes me feel very bad for who's ever taken it when they're like, oh, it hurts so good. And I was like, yeah, it's gonna hurt when you have to do your business later too, because you weren't more careful. Anyway, another one And this is one that my friends continually laugh at me for, and so do my viewers when I mention it. I get very frustrated, and I know, like, it's building tension, it's building the chemistry, whatever, but if a couple is cock-blocked, is coitus interruptus more than twice in a book, usually if it's more than once for me, okay, but if it's more than twice in a book, I get so ragey, because I know that it's an author, again, trying to build the sexual tension, trying to get them so close to an almost, and then it gets pulled away. But if that happens more than twice in a book, especially once we've already crossed like the 50 or 60%, like if the only sexual encounters have all been aborted because someone has stopped them or one of them has, like, I mean, changing your mind is absolutely allowed, but like if it keeps happening where people aren't like committed to the event, I get so ragey for irrational reasons, okay? And again, this one's not a book ruining event, but specifically I can think of some historicals where this happened, where literally we get almost all the way up to a penetrative act and then something breaks them up, and that happens 3-4 times in a book. I'm ready to throw it out, because like I'm here for the smut, and there are authors who can make it work, right? Just like a lot of these things I'm about to list, there are exceptions. There are exceptions where it can work, but I'm talking in general. This is a pet peeve of mine. If it continually is happening. Now, I'm not calling that the same as a slow burn, okay? To me, they're not the same thing to me, because you're trying to use aborted sexual experience, like aborted sex, to build closer to it, but not actually commit. If this is a slow burn, we shouldn't even like be up to those points then, because having the sex aborted doesn't mean that it wasn't going to happen. It means someone got in the way. So I don't consider that part of the build. We're already at the point where you're ready to do it. You're just getting interrupted over and over again, and it's exhausting emotionally for me, okay? It's exhausting emotionally for me. So we've said enough, but it's something my friends will laugh at. But when it comes up, I get extremely irritated, because I'm like, why do we keep cock-blocking this couple? Do you not like them? Do you not like them? Do you not want them to have pleasure? Sexual frustration is not good for anybody. I mean, again, 1 or 2 times is about the max for me, because it does happen. Life happens. But when the author's using it as a device to give you a tease over and over again, that's more what I'm talking about. You know, if it's a single dad and the cock blocking is literally because his kid shows up, like, that is a part of life. Like, that's real. But when it's happening in a historical, let's say, and like it's literally a married couple who hasn't consummated yet because of things getting in the way over and over again, I'm like, do you not like these people? Like, why are we doing this, you know? Because I think some authors think that sex is the culminating event of a couple finally being together. And I think that's an example of bad writing, because there are 100 marriage of conveniences I can name where sex is happening right away, and there is still a journey to go on. Just because they are married and having sex does not mean that their relationship is where it needs to go. Perfect example, I just reread Brutal Prince. Callum and Ada are having sex pretty early on because they have amazing chemistry. But each time that they have a sexual encounter, they're sharing more of their heart. And so the sex each time, it's evolving. It's becoming something that's emotional later on. So to me, it's a sign of a poor writer if you're like, well, I can't have them have sex because then they've peaked. And I'm like, then you're not building the other parts. You're relying on the sex as being your culminating event. And I just think it's bad writing. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to go on the list of the least annoying to the most annoying here. I mean, I have some other pretty serious ones once we go from there, but we'll go with this one because there are different levels of this. But never-ending miscommunications. Huge thing that I don't like. Specifically, when these communications that we are miscommuning have to do with other, like, people saying things about us. And I have a further level to do with this that I'll get to in a second. But when, let's say they have to do with us reading a text that we don't have context for, seeing a photo that's from the past, seeing hearing a whisper about someone and immediately believing it. I hate that so much when someone immediately like we've already worked through our big issue, and then the third act conflict is someone says something and we immediately believe that person over the person that we've spent 300 pages building a deep connection with. We know who they are, and we don't even check. Like, we don't even check with the partner first. We are immediately like, oh my God, I believe his brother who hates him and would absolutely love to ruin his marriage. I'm going to believe what that person says and immediately kick my husband out of the house. Ugh, it's so frustrating to me when that is like what the third act conflict is. Only beat out by my next level, which also includes other people. Now, this specifically happened in The Marquis Makes His Move, and I was ranting a bit about it, okay? Because here's this pet peeve. The pet peeve is when there is a secret, whether big or small, because there are different levels, and I differentiate this by, it's not a secret that has been kept, well, how do I want to word this? When it's a secret that it is now time for one of the people to say, okay? So my example of this is that, like, in The Marquis Made Me Do It, or The Marquis Makes His Move, sorry, I'm confusing it with the Viscount one. There's a secret that the hero is keeping because that's the point of the book. Like, there's a secret he's keeping. It has now become time for him to share it. Like, it was acceptable before for this person to keep this secret, like, because it's part of the plot. But we've reached the point where it's time to be shared, and the hero acknowledges that it's time to share. Then, just as this person is about to share, like, literally we believe him. It's not just a case of them saying, like, oh, I'm going to tell them later. It's planned out. He literally, like, has a situation planned out to tell the love interest, hey, this is what's been going on. And then there is a emergency event where the hero has to leave. And then the next scene is someone else, a sister, telling the heroine this secret. And now, because it's coming from someone else, it seems that the hero never meant to tell, which is obviously not true. And the other person, the heroine completely overreacts and is like, fuck that guy, I'm done. Okay? So if you see the scenario I'm going for here, I hope I've made it clear. I know it's difficult because, again, these are oddly specific things that bug me, but it's like when one character has a secret to share and it's time to share it, but then they aren't able to, not because they're choosing not to tell, but literally because something physically stops him from telling, or her, whatever. And then someone else tells the secret, whether accidentally or purposely. They're like, oh, I thought you knew this thing. And the person receiving the information is like, I've lost all trust for this person. It's over with. And they want to break up. That infuriates me. And then in that same book, which I know I'm picking on it, but it doubled down because then there was a secret that the heroine had to share. And this one, I mean, it's a big secret, but it wasn't going to have the same, like, angry impact to have it shared. And someone else shares it to the hero. Now, this was a case of it didn't ruin their relationship by any means, but it would have been news that our heroine maybe would have liked to have shared herself. And instead, a character that we've never even met before the scene that they show up in is the one who tells. And it removes that intimate moment where the heroine would get to share something. And so the hero, he does not react badly. This one is the opposite case. Like, he is excited, and you can probably guess what I mean by this, but I'm still using vague terms just in case. But it took away the opportunity for the heroine to give good news. And instead, the bubble is literally popped by someone else. So, again, I know this one is oddly specific, but it happens so much. So maybe it's not oddly specific. I just don't think it has the name. But it's that other people telling secrets that our main character should share. when they're planning to share it, okay? Because again, that's a different from there's a secret that they don't want to tell them and then they tell them and they're upset. Like, because that's a reason for one of them to be upset if it was a secret they weren't going to find out. But the scenario I was describing, the hero is literally prevented from telling her. He's not trying to continue it on, like he can't because there's an emergency, you know? And that just like infuriates me when it happens, because it's, again, for me, like, okay, the only way I can have drama in this is if this couple who's getting along really well gets backstabbed by a well-meaning person who throws a wrench into their relationship and just skews it all to hell, you know? Moving along, but that is something that I see happen so often, and it's a plot device that I'm like, I just don't like it. I don't like it. Let's keep going through these. Okay, this one really has to do with a certain genre, specifically with dark romance, specifically with motorcycle romance, but not limited to, but it's where I notice it the most. And that's going to be derogatory nicknames or slang names used outside of sex. And that, where I'm being specific, is that I like derogatory terms in the bedroom. I like, you know, call people a slut or a whore or my bad girl, or more aggressive terms. I like that stuff, especially if especially when it's consensually and the woman likes it too. I'm like, pull my hair, call me a bad girl. I'm here. I love it. I don't like rude nicknames outside of the bedroom. And for me, that is a huge part of biker culture. And I know it's part of it, but I don't like the slang of club whore, or like, I don't mind the term old lady because that's just what they will say. But I don't like my bitch or the club slut or whore, or I hate it. It makes my skin crawl. And so that excludes me from many motorcycle romances. Like, so many that I've tried, I can't get past it. And I've been recommended plenty where people are like, this one, it's not so bad, or like this, that's just perfect. And I'm like, but again, that's why I don't read that subgenre very much, because I'm telling you what my pet peeve is. And people are like, oh, we'll just try it. And I'm like, I've tried many. There are many that I've DNF'd. There are many that I've given 2 or 3 stars because I don't like it. There's very few MC romance that I really enjoy, and I just will go for it, because I hate it. I hate when there is a club slut who just has to sleep with whoever they're told because they need the safety, they need the protection, and that happens. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be in those books, because there's things in dark romances that I love that other people don't want to read. I'm just saying, like, that's a pet peeve of mine and I don't like it. And it's also, again, it doesn't only happen in MC romance. I'm just telling you the huge reason. The other one, and I didn't even put this on here because this is like, it's a trigger for me, not like a pet peeve, but there's also usually a lot of drug use in MC romances. And drug use by main characters is a huge trigger for me. Like, it makes my skin crawl. I can't get on the back of, like, on the side of people who do drugs for fun. I just can't. It's ruined too many people's lives in my life, and I just can't enjoy it. I'm able to read books that have drugs in them, like, because MCs and mafia, they are often selling drugs, but they're usually like, oh, there's drugs being sold, but they're not doing them. Sorry. Anyway, that's a side note. That I don't include on like a pet peeve. That's actually a trigger. It's a hard line trigger for a lot of books that I've seen in. But there was a book that I just read where he would call her like a bitch or a spoiled brat or all of these things outside of the bedroom, and it just made the hero come off as so mean that once their romantic parts started, I disliked him so much that I didn't want to read him with her, because he just seemed to, I knew from his POV that he was saying those things to keep distance, but it was very hard to be on the hero's side, and I wasn't on his side because he had called her all those names before they were fucking, and then I just couldn't believe it because I'm like, well, you don't respect her, because if that's the way that you're talking to her before that, I don't like it. So anyway, I hope that explains a bit more like why MC romances don't work for me and why certain bully romances don't work for me. JT Geisinger really explained this in a way that I appreciate, because in her Queens and Monsters, for instance, there are some names that our heroes call the heroines, like in Brutal Vows, which I adore. Spider calls Raina a wee viper. He's calling her this vicious thing, but from him, it's actually a term of like respect, even though it seems like a slur. It's clear to us as a reader that like he's calling her that because she's fearsome, and that's where it's coming from. It's not meant as a derogatory term. So I don't know, it just works. And JT Geisinger explains it as she never wants our heroes to be cruel or mean. So though there is like mean words that might be said, or like banter where it seems like they, you know, the heroes never cross over into like cruel levels. And for me, that happens in MC romances, some mafia romances, bully romances, some enemies to lover that are contemporary, and like, why are you enemies? Like, you're not true enemies. So that's a big one for me, because I want my heroes, whether it's an enemies or, you know, an arranged marriage or whatever, I want them to have a certain reverence for women and a reverence for their heroine. And I don't see that when they are being derogatory. Okay, now I just have a few left. I know we'll mention this one quickly because this one I think is super well known, and I know I'm not the only one. I really dislike cheating in books. Now, that one isn't a trigger because I have read many books where cheating is like cheating in name only, because there'll be, you know, someone is in a bad relationship with an abuser, and so they can't just leave the relationship, but they are cheating and they're in this relationship. Or, you know, yeah, that's more of the scenario that it's okay with. Or it's cheating in name only because technically these people are married, but they've been separated for 5 years and they're trying to get a divorce, you know, like that type of things. But if there is cheating, and the reason the cheating is that the woman is just a bitch, and so we're supposed to believe that she deserves to be cheated on, I'm so not into that. I'm so not here for it. Especially if the person is a nice person. And it's just, we can't help ourselves because we are meant to be together, so we're cheating. And what would you do if you were with someone and you met someone else you're supposed to be with? Well, guess what the answer is? You break up with that person. If you're with someone and you meet someone who's your soulmate, you break up with that other person first. I don't care what anyone's reasoning is. So in some romances, I can suspend my disbelief for that, for the story, like I can. I generally don't give those books 5 stars if that's happening, and I don't like it. Again, especially if the reason is just like, oh, because they're a bitch, or oh, that man doesn't appreciate me, so I'm cheating on him. Like, that for me, like, it's too close to real life, and it's the excuses people lose. And in my romances, I don't want real life. I don't want real life. I want fantasy. And the fantasy is, even if you're with this person and you meet someone else that you love, like, I expect you to respect that person and break up with them before you pursue something else. I need that to happen. Then, and this is one that I got this name from Big Sis, and that is white fanging. When she explained to me what white fanging was, which comes from the TV show New Girl, when I can't remember who says it to Nick. I think it's probably, what's his face? God, I can't remember his name. But he says it to Nick that he had like white fanged the love interest because after sex he decided that like, oh, I'm not good enough for them, so I'm going to let them go for their own good. But it's always after a sexual experience. So if you are going to let someone go for their own good, please don't fuck them first and give us all the good feelings and then immediate regret. So that's a big, like, again, it's not necessarily a trigger, but once Crystal pointed out to me that this was a thing, I see it everywhere. Specifically with some authors that are very popular in the historical genre. Every single book I've read by a certain author, I won't call the certain author out, but I've talked about it before, so you might be able to figure it out if I do. I know how every sexual encounter they write is going to end. And it's going to end with either the hero or the heroine regretting that they slept with the person and running away from them. So the other person wakes up to an empty bed and feels rejected and used. And that is despicable to me. Okay? It's despicable to me to do that to someone. And I have a really hard time getting back on the side of the other person. There are some forbidden or taboo romances where I'm okay with it because for them, when they break the taboo and are then like, oh no, what have I done? They're more horrified with themselves that they've done it. And that's why, like, this happens in like gay for you books. You know, if someone hasn't thought they were attracted to the same sex and then they sleep with them, they are shocked that they did. And so they're not necessarily running from the person that they had an encounter with, but they're like running from themselves, you know. Again, that's why this one isn't a trigger, but it happens so often. And for me, it's because like sex is such a powerful and emotional thing. And so to be like abandoned after it is just very scarring to me. And I would not trust the person again who did that, you know. And again, their expectations, like, I don't feel that way about one night stand romances. That's what the trope is. Like, I know I'm getting into it. It's more for me when, again, specifically probably in historicals, like when there's been a big build up to them sleeping together and then it happens and then the person is letting them go for their own good. They're like, oh, I slept with them. I'm not good enough for this woman. She deserves the world. I'm going to leave her. And I'm like, you just deflowered this woman. I mean, not to make it about that, but like, you just deflowered this woman who very much likes you, and now you're just going to leave because you're not good enough for her, but you're just going to leave her and make her feel like she wasn't worth anything. And that's why you're leaving. You know, I just don't like it. And then the last one that I want to mention, and I believe this one is also on Crystal's list as well, because we both feel very strongly about this, especially as a dark romance reader, because what tears me up is people who have gone through emotional trauma and are working through it, whether it is physical and emotional, whether it is sexual, whether it is abusive verbally. I really hate disappearing trauma. So whether that sexual trauma happens within our story or before our story, or, before or during our story, I want to see our people working through it. The thing that I love about dark romance is that usually we're working through trauma. Like, what makes a dark romance dark is usually because there is sexual assault or physical abuse or, you know, dark taboo scenarios like that. And to think that someone is just okay, and it's not that everyone needs full stop, like that everyone needs therapy and needs like a 12-step program for it, but it's like, show it to me. And the times when this is the most shocking, because usually what I've found, dark romance does do a good job working through it. That's why an author is choosing to write in the dark romance genre, is because they are showing trauma and then how sex or romance or working through it can help them, not fix them, but assist them in getting better. But when it can be very shocking and the most upsetting is when it's in a contemporary that is written not necessarily as a light contemporary, but is a contemporary romance, and someone gets assaulted on page and then the trauma is just gone, you know, or the first time having sex with the hero, it's just all better, I'm healed. That is like extremely offensive to me and to people who have survived trauma, that it would just be gone. And again, not everyone will have the same level to it. So if that's the kind of hero or heroine you're writing, that they aren't going to suffer over long, like, I still would like you to explain that then, you know, because there's some traumatic things that I've lived through. We're not going into all of those today. We're not. But I, for many years after, wasn't affected by them. It was only as an adult, when I really reflected on what I'd lived through, that I needed to work through some things. And those things that I needed to work through, they didn't come about in me hiding away or hurting myself or alcoholism, but they were mental health things that I needed to work through. Which is how I think it is for the majority of people, that you just need to like work through things. So anyway, that is a huge thing for me, especially as an advocate of dark romance. And I think when dark romance gets the baddest rap is when these, you know, rapes or assaults happen to women, and then they meet a hero who can just give it to them real good, and then all that trauma's disappeared. That is not a good way to do it. And but I am specifically talking about books that seem contemporary and light and fun, and then we don't work through stuff, because it's like, you just hit me over the head with this and then we didn't work it out, you know? So yeah. But anyway, there you go. This still ended up being a half-hour long video. I will have linked Crystal's video that she did about this. It felt really good to kind of talk through some of the things that I don't like. I hope this better explains why I am adverse to some certain books or another, and it's because I've maybe heard that these things happen in it, and also why I might give certain books like 2 or 3 stars that everyone else might be loving. It might be because they fall into these. So thank you so much for watching this. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like more recommendations, weekly wrap-ups, and all that fun stuff. I'll see you next time. Bye.